Welcome to the Korean War Veterans Memorial in USA's capital, Washington, D.C. This memorial is very significant because it signifies the whole Korean War, a large, brutal, and meaningful war which happened between 1950 and 1953. History between South and North Korea. The split at the 38th parallel, a circle of latitude at 38 degrees. Now on to our fellow historian.
Hello, I am Professor An and specialize on Korean history. This war started for political reasons after the initial split of North and South Korea after World War II in May 1945. Between the communist North Koreans allied with the Soviet Union and the democratic South Koreans allied with the UN, namely the American troops who later partook in the war. At first, the Korean leader Kim Il-sung declared an attack on the South Koreans on June 25, 1950, ruled by Syngman Rhee. This attack was unexpected and successfully took over not only Seoul, the South Korean capital, but eventually all of South Korea except for Busan at the very south of South Korea. During this attack, Syngman Rhee decides to execute over 100,000 civilians in fear of them becoming communist. This is where the UN, the only ones with enough power to fight back, had to decide whether to accept the loss of a country rooting for democracy and possible future problems, or to bring troops to South Korea and fight back. The American President Truman and other policymakers in America did not want to appear soft on communism after the Cold War, so they sent trusted designated commander called MacArthur on the 27th of June 1950. President Truman also said in 1947 that the US will help any country that is threatened by communism.
All that happened still is relevant to this day, and the Korean War Veterans Memorial successfully symbolizes and remembers all American troops that died in the Korean War. This memorial is in Washington, D.C., just under the Lincoln Memorial. It is 8,903 meters squared large and was founded in 1995. It was created by artists Frank Gaylord and Lewis Nelson. If you start at the bottom left tip of the isosceles triangle, the first thing you see is the path going straight to the tip of the triangle, which intersects into a circle. To your left on the path, you see a short wall which names the 22 United Nations countries that contributed to the UN Army in the Korean War, with medical supplies, artillery, and troops.
There were some talks of a truce with North Korea in which North Korean troops would stop attacking and go away. North Koreans did not cooperate, so the UN troops fought back strong. Luckily for South Koreans, this was a very successful but difficult counterattack in which they did not go as far as the 38th parallel, but they managed to conquer the North Korean capital, Pyongyang, by the 20th of October 1950. This is when China brought hundreds of thousands of troops to the war called the People's Volunteer Army and completely stopped the UN troops from continuing and recaptured Pyongyang. A few months later, peace talks begin, but the war drags on. MacArthur wanted to unleash atomic bombs on China, but President Truman denied this due to a fear of a bigger war. In fact, he fired MacArthur for this idea. Later on November 4th, 1952, Eisenhower becomes the new President of America. He wants to end the Korean War. About a year later, on July 27, 1953, both sides agreed to an armistice in which both sides stop fighting and stay split at the 38th parallel. To this day, North Korea and South Korea remained at a stalemate after an attempt at reuniting North Korea and South Korea in 1954 at Geneva, Switzerland.
To your right, you see 19 statues of very heavy stainless steel soldiers in the grass in the middle of the triangle, which are larger than life size and designed by Frank Gaylord. The circle at the apex of the triangle is a shallow pool of remembrance, honoring the casualties of the war. Now walk around the pool and admire the memorial in silence for all the casualties and strong men who fought for their country. There is a saying written in large, saying, "Freedom is not free," to show that the Koreans had to fight for their freedom and political beliefs and lost millions in that process. The pool has linen trees surrounding it in a way that creates a barrel effect, which allows the pool to stand out when the sun reflects on it. The pool, with a 9-meter diameter, also has inscriptions of the facts of the war, letting people realize the scale at which people died or even got wounded. Some fascinating but horrible facts of the UN in the Korean War are 628,000 dead, 1,064,000 wounded, and near 100,000 captured, and an astonishing 470,000 went missing. When you turn around on the other path, you can see a path with thousands of photographic images on a 50-meter polished granite wall of troops of the war to remind us of them and what they did. When reflecting 19 statues from the wall, it looks like 38 troops are walking through the fields towards an American flag in the middle of the apex, representing the 38 months of the war and the 38th parallel, which separates North and South Korea. This wall was cleverly designed by Lewis Nelson. This memorial is open at all times to pay respects to the millions of casualties and hundreds of thousands of deaths. It also is decorated with South Korea's national flower, Rose of Sharon hibiscus plants.